everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I am here again with Pastor Brian, and we are going to talk about Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 2. So if you haven't seen our talk on Episode 1, you can go back and see that. But now we're going to talk about Episode 2, where a lot of things happen.
Yes, it's
Starting right off with the dwarves, which was great because I love the dwarf characters. Disa, as we both said, our favorite character maybe. Um, and we see that the prince is kind of been, now that he's been disowned, he's kind of, they can't even afford to buy food, right? So they're wandering around the market and he wants to buy a lot of food, and Disa's like, we don't have the money for that, basically. And then there's an earthquake or something, right? And the tunnels that they use to get light down the city with the big mirrors collapse, and so there's no more light in the city. So yeah, we start off with a really dramatic, here's how far the prince has fallen, and we're going to destroy Khazad-dûm with an earthquake.
yeah,
So that was our introduction to episode 2.
yeah.
And Brian, you
Khazad-dûm is cool for me. I'm a theme park kid because I was the only kid from the hood. My great aunt would take us to Disney as a kid, and so I loved all kinds of like imaginative worlds, and I guess nowadays we would say world building. But so just the way all that light and the cool way it fell across those beautiful sets are, it was just so that was impactful for me. And then of course I think back to when they go through there in the Rings movies, right, that we saw a few years ago. So that was a powerful. Well, of course the dwarves are cool, but that was a powerful thing for me. I definitely was interested through, especially the second episode, and had a lot of feelings. That I feel like they're doing a better job of, I don't know, maybe the plot is happening and it's happening in a way that feels involving, I guess, for me. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I had a thing I used to ask people, and I probably never asked you this, Brian. And if
I
you're
can't believe
watching this out there, you might ask this of yourself. If you could go to Middle Earth, just like 5 seconds, and just see something, right? Not time to get involved in the story or anything. You just want to see something with your own eyes for 5 seconds. Where would you go? What would you look at? And several people told me that they wanted to go to Minas Tirith.
yeah.
But my brother said he wanted to go to Khazad-dûm because he was so curious about the infrastructure and how you run a city underground with like waste disposal and where you're growing your food, and which I'm sure he couldn't find out in 5 seconds. But he was the one person that picked Khazad-dûm to go to.
Yeah, I'm a moon child, Cancer astrological sign, so probably Numenor because I
Mm,
love that architecture. I love the statues of all the humans, and
mm,
then I love that it's a water culture of
okay.
humans. So, and well, unless I could see Aragorn, and then I'd go because I sure don't like the Numenorians, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, so we start off with the dwarves, and they're obviously in big trouble. And she can't convince her husband to talk to his father. And he also gets like pushed by the other dwarves. Like
Bullied, yeah.
he's getting bullied right now that he's not got. It's like, okay, so he's still, I guess, the prince, but I guess not really. But you're just gonna like now shove him around and act like he's some terrible guy. But I guess maybe the king's like, okay, it's not my son anymore, and people are like, oh, cool, now we can bully him, and king won't care, I guess. So
He
yeah,
gives a
dwarves.
cool threat, though. I loved whatever threat he gave at the end. It was really good threat. I can't remember anymore, but it was very dwarven, very.
Okay. But then we go and we see Galadriel. She's at her brother's shrine. Um, and then she has this weird conversation with Celebrimbor, but of course it turns out it's really a dream. And she's really having this meeting with like Gil-galad, and they're discussing what to do about Sauron and where he might be. And someone reports that he's last seen going into Mordor. So they don't know where he is now. They just suspect strongly he's going to try to get to back to Celebrimbor because he'll want to make more rings, and that's the only person who can help him do that. So it's like time to go visit Celebrimbor because no one apparently visits Eregion from Linden ever. We seem to have no communication between these cities
Yeah.
at all. There's no pigeons being sent back and forth. There's no constant couriers carrying daily dispatches of this is what's happening. Here's the news. Here's the things from the king, or personal letters from somebody in your family to somebody else, or traders, somebody makes something in Origi and it goes to sell their product in Linden or whatever. There's no farmers or, whatever. There's going back and forth. I mean, there's no traffic, zero, because after all this time, no one has managed to get to Origian from Linden, and even the couriers who get killed by Sauron somewhere off stage. They don't come home. No one's worried about them apparently, and it's just like there's this black hole in between these elf cities, and no one ever visits from one to the other for any reason.
Yeah.
So
I feel like
nobody
that's
knows.
plot armor. That's not good. Yeah.
It's like, the Persians had a really great mail system, and that was like, what, 1500 BC or something, and you elves can't manage it. The Persians did it. Why can't you? And then we go to the Dark Wizard. And now this is one of our storylines that's not in the Akalabeth. So here we can do anything we want. So like, who is the Dark Wizard? People have been tossing out who could this guy be? Any thoughts on that, Brian?
I mean, you get those freaky deaky people again.
At least we know where they came from now.
Right. I knew when they flew off that wasn't the end of them, right? Because that's not how you end. And so it was just kind of freaky. And I mean, I don't know the canon the way you do, but I wasn't excited by this, obviously. I'm a good guy, but it just felt like conflict that didn't need to be there. But I guess it's going to develop against Gandalf and Poppy. I don't know. That's what it looked like happened, but
Yeah, we'll see. So, I mean, if he's someone mentioned in the Silmarillion, then he could be one of the blue wizards, I suppose.
They were wearing blue. They did have blue on.
Well, there are two blue wizards that go off to the east and are never heard from again, so they don't play any kind of part in the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings. We just know that they were there, and they walked on through Middle Earth to go into the east, and that was that. So maybe this is one of those guys. There's not a whole lot of people he could be and be a wizard unless more wizards were sent than just the 5 that we know of. Maybe so he could be a different wizard. I suppose it's not mentioned in the Silmarillion, but
maybe I just didn't pick up on it. I just don't understand his motivation. Like, what do they want to capture the stranger, or do they want to control him? Do they want to kill him? I didn't understand what's going on. So I think maybe that's why I wasn't really thrilled with that.
Yeah, we don't really know what their purpose is yet. We knew that the 3 women he sent out last season were looking for Sauron. And when they thought Gandalf, well, we assumed the stranger is Gandalf. He could, I suppose, turn out to be someone else. But when they find the stranger and they think he's Sauron, they're like, oh yeah, Sauron, cool, if you complete our mission. Then when it turns out not to be Sauron, then they get kind of pissy. But so at least we know what their one particular little errand was about, but why they were on that errand. What is a Dark Wizard's point to all of this? Who knows yet? We don't know his motivations. So yeah, but he's one of those bad guys you don't really want to work for. It's because they always kill the messenger.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are you killing your followers? Because then no one's going to tell you anything. They'll be too scared you're going to assassinate them or threaten them. So you're not going to get any good information. But okay, the bad guys do have a tendency to do that. But he sends those guys out to look for the stranger, right? And so they're off hunting them down. And we go back to the dwarves, where we get another singing scene, which is cool. But this time it doesn't work. The mountain is not listening to them anymore. And it seems to be, since they are able to leave Khazad-dûm at the end of this episode and go to Eregion to talk to Celebrimbor, clearly the entrance is still accessible. There's at least a door you can get out of the freaking mountain. But the tunnels that bring light in are still collapsed, and the mountain won't tell them where it's safe to dig to try to reestablish those shafts for the light. So yeah, the mountain is buttoned up, won't share.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal for the dwarves, obviously.
And if they have to grow their crops outside of the mountain, then I guess, the chances of them being destroyed or, and puts everything at risk. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So but then we had the scene with Disa and the king, and she doesn't hold back, right? She tells the king what she thinks, and he's still, well, it's my son who, offended me. Why should I be the one to apologize? But she just keeps going after both of these guys, well, you're so stubborn, and we're not going to get accomplished if you keep working against each other. And so far, they're not really seeing it, so she's not succeeding in getting them to get together just yet. But then we go back to Galadriel and Elrond, and the scene where he's just like, "You're dead to me," basically. I wrote down the line. He says, "If our friendship ever meant anything to you, please leave."
Yeah.
So, F off Galadriel. We're not friends anymore. So, she's. I'm not sure we're supposed to get out of the whole Elrond thing just yet. He's so anti-ring at this point. And it seems like, sure, maybe we should be like, oh, these are really cool, and be 100% on board with the rings. But it seems like we don't have any proof yet that they are corrupted, right? And they aren't, at least in the Silmarillion, because they were made without Sauron being around. And he couldn't really control them. But I mean, at least in the Silmarillion and in the Lord of the Rings, when he puts on the one ring, the three wearing the elven rings are able to perceive him, and they remove their rings and they won't use them until the ring gets cut off his finger. Once he doesn't have the ring anymore, the one ring, they can use their rings again, which they kind of do in secret, for the third age. But he isn't able to control their rings. So, but of course, Elrond doesn't know that at this point. None of our characters really know what's going on with these rings just yet. But the fact that Elrond is just so, you're wearing them, you shouldn't be wearing them, we shouldn't even have them. And it's just like, you're just so, so stressed about this to the point where I'm not sure I buy it even.
Yeah, I find myself saying, "What's really bothering him?" But
Yeah, there's some deflection there or something. But then he has this discussion with Círdan, who, for whatever reason, has just shaved his beard off. I don't know why. Who shows him like, oh, look, I put my hand in the water and all the fish swim around, and like, we don't know the power of these rings yet. And he's like, just because they're powerful doesn't necessarily make them evil. We need to understand them, which seems like it makes some sense. But Elrond's still like, no, they're bad. They could be bad. There's a possibility that they're bad. Let's just get rid of them, So Círdan tries to give him some advice there. I'm not sure it takes real well,
but
though.
then he kills a fish. So
No, he didn't kill the fish. He put it right back in the water.
Oh, he did put it back in the water. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a few little scenes in the stranger, and they get attacked by those guys on horses, and so he calls up a dust storm, but he's not able to control it. So more proof he can't control his powers yet. So the Harfoots get all blown off in one direction, kind of like Dorothy and Wizard of Oz, and he gets blown off in a different direction. So we'll have to wait for episode 4 to find out where they all end up. And then we see that Celebrimbor used the last little sliver of mithril to create Ithilden. And this is going to be that stuff that'll be on the doors of Khazad-dûm, so that when our characters want to get in there in Fellowship of the Ring,
Right.
they wait for the moon to come out, and when the moon shines on the Ithilden, it glows when you can't see it in any other light. So this is when Celebrimbor invents that.
Nice.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Halbrand is still at the gate trying to get in. Right?
Yes, sir.
Sauron's decided that he shows some patience. Eventually, Celebrimbor is just going to give up and let him in. So, and it works.
And he knew he would, and I knew he would too.
Yeah. So, but then my favorite scenes, I think, then are Sauron and Celebrimbor having these discussions, because it's clear that Sauron is just pulling one over on Celebrimbor so easily. That this elf lord is just so just ready to fall at any flattery, or anything. Because even when he's pretending to be human here, this character Halbrand that uh, that Celebrimbor thinks is, well, he's just a human, maybe a human king, but he's still like just a human. And the human is like, like we're the same, kind of. He doesn't actually say we're the same exactly, but he says like, have you heard from High King? Have you heard from Galadriel? And when Celebrimbor says no, he's like, well, see, like the high and mighty, they always forget about creative types like us, we're always like left out of everything. And so Celebrimbor apparently, I guess, feels left out. That's kind of like, yeah, I get that. And so, just Sauron goes on from there about how, you're so great, and I've come from the Valar basically to help you out. And he does this whole light show and goes into the fire and comes out as looking like some sort of elf lord. He doesn't look human anymore. And Celebrimbor like even like kneels to him. And he's like, oh no, don't kneel to me, Um, I'm just your partner in this. We're gonna make some great things. And Celebrimbor is all for it, right? Now he's got like somebody from the Valar to like justify the fact that
Yeah.
he's going down this direction of making all these magical rings
The
because he wants
giver
to
of
have
gifts.
something. Yeah, well,
Isn't that what he
Anatar,
called himself?
well,
Yeah,
yeah, but the Anatar means Lord of Gifts.
Lord of
And
Gifts. That's it. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, and that's what he called himself in the Apocryph too. But he says to Celebrimbor, "You and I have work to do." And so here's Celebrimbor think, well, the Valar think I'm so cool. They've sent this messenger, and he's going to come help me. And so just like with a little bit of a light show and changing to look like an elf, he just gets Celebrimbor to eat out of his hand. So even to the point where he lies to him and says, well, the High King has forbidden, you to do anything else with this fort. She's ordered you to shut it down. And Celebrimbor is like, well, I'm going to write him a letter and tell him that we're shutting it down, and then we just won't do it. And Sauron's like, well, you lie to your High King. And and Celebrimbor gives this little egotistical speech about this is my moment. I have been waiting for this for centuries, and this is my time, and I'm gonna, not gonna let anything, especially the High King, keep me from this, right? So Sauron's got, okay, this guy is like just eating out of my hand, and he
Absolutely.
does this lovely speech, which I listened to enough times to be able to copy it down. And so when he's got Celebrimbor there, he says, when our work is complete, never again will the world look at you as the mere scion of Fëanor, but forevermore revere you, Lord of the Rings. And Celebrimbor just eats that up. And it took me a while though, because they were messing around with the actor's voice to make him like sound more
Yes.
impressive. And so I swear the word revere kept hearing to my ears as fear. And I was like, they'll forever fear you. That sounds terrible. But like the fifth or sixth time I listened to it, I was like, oh, it's revere you. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay, we'll forever revere you, Lord of the Rings. And it's just
I
like,
didn't get
yeah,
Lord of the Rings until I went back and re-listened to it. I couldn't tell what he said. Yeah.
it's hard to tell because of
And
whatever they
then
were
I
doing to his
laughed.
voice.
That's a little heavy-handed, but yeah, I laughed at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, he's got Celebrimbor. I
It's
mean, this
buttering
is,
them up. That's
but
right.
and I love the way he does it. And there's just some great lines in there and some great them playing off of each other. So yeah, those have been my favorite scenes, really, because uh, just the way they work together. And then we end the episode with the dwarves, the prince Durin, getting this invitation to come and talk to Celebrimbor. And so then we're kind of like, I think that's about this when the episode ends. So it was mostly again a Sauron episode and a dwarf episode with some elfish stuff in there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, the elfish stuff kind of feels in limbo, except for what happens with Sauron and Celebrimbor, right? Like it kind of feels a little drawn out, but yeah, that was two was a great episode for me. I really enjoyed every minute of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually watch that episode again, and it was great. So any final thoughts before we move on and let people.
I just I just love I feel like most of the time the plot moves. I still complain about the dark scenes. I don't know. I have to watch like the summaries to find out what happened in the dark scene sometimes, but it's uh I like it. I'm enjoying it this season a little bit more than last season. And I remember there were slow ones and then there were better
Yeah.
ones. But I feel like 1 and 2 are off to a really good start. They're not dragging, but again, maybe if you think of last season as a lot of background, they don't have to do as much background this season, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten better, at least with the lines or whatever, for like Gil-galad, because he just seemed so
Yeah.
ineffectual last year. All he got to do mostly was whine about how we're going to have to leave because the tree is dying, you know. And this time he seems a little more, you know, like a king. You know, he's
Yeah.
making decisions and, you know, doing things. So he seems a bit more like an actual person in charge.
Yeah.
So I like him better. Loved, of course, that Círdan has shown up, and
Jada's at last. Yeah, he's kind of fun.
the whole Sauron and Celebrimbor scenes are just so fantastic. And we got back to the dwarves, and the dwarves are great. Love Disa. Love her like giving her father-in-law a bit of her mind and then turn around and giving her husband some more of her mind. And just, you know, she's a someone to like a force of nature there, you know, and
Yeah.
I think eventually these guys aren't going to be able to resist her anymore. They're just going to have to make up, I guess. We'll see.
We'll have to watch episode 3 and see what happens.
We will. And we will do that in our next episode. So if you like this, please like and subscribe and leave us a comment if there's something you agree or disagree with. Maybe you don't like the scenes of Celebrimbor and Sauron. Perfectly okay. If you don't, let us know, though, why you don't like those, if you don't, or why you do like other things. And maybe we skipped over something you would prefer us to talk about. I have no idea. You can let us know that too. But in the meantime, we will go watch episode 3 and come back and tell you what we thought about it. So see you next time.
Bye bye.